Hello folks. So, this is your Monday media review. There's a little bit of tobacco on my tongue, my apologies. Today, I'm going to tell you about a little gem of a show that I discovered in its, I believe, first syndication run. I don't think I saw it when it was in its original run. It's a show called Sanctuary. Excuse me. It's a show called Sanctuary. It stars Amanda Tapping as Samantha Carter. Who starred as Samantha Carter in Stargate SG-1. The show is, and I'm going to do my damnedest not to spoil anything, but it is urban sci-fi fantasy. It's got a lot of fantasy, well, no, let me rephrase. It's got a lot of early sci-fi elements from things like the pulp shows or the pulp novels and things like that. And back then, sci-fi and fantasy were very much more closely identified than they are now. They hadn't really separated into two different genres. That's why Edgar Rice Burroughs, for example, can talk about how a man can be magically teleported to Mars and be able to leap like Superman, for example. Science fiction that is essentially fantasy. It has what would amount to magical elements in it. And Sanctuary is not that different. Sanctuary definitely harkens back to those sorts of stories. They're not as concerned with the hard science side of science fiction, even though it did originally air on both the Sci-Fi Channel in the States and what was Space here in Canada at the time. From pretty much the first few frames I saw, I was hooked. And did my utmost to catch it every week or every day whenever it was running. And I've recently rediscovered it on Tubi, so that's the link for you guys. It doesn't have the cachet of Firefly in terms of the recognizability factor, but those of us who've seen it, who've watched the entire show, we know it's a hidden gem. It's still a bit of a diamond in the rough at times, and in some places, the later seasons, not the best. The initial web episodes, again, not the best. But the storylines and character arcs are good, very good. And at times you go, whoa, oh, that's cool. And I had a look at some of the critical response. It really strikes me like the critics were not. It looked to me like we were running into the issue of non-pop culture fans criticizing a pop culture property and not really having any love for the genre. Some of the performances, there is a character called Tesla, and the way that character is portrayed by the individual who plays him, if I remember right, no, that's not Peter Wingfield. Peter Wingfield does show up in the show in a different role, but there are elements of Victorian sci-fi, modern sci-fi, urban fantasy, urban horror, Christopher Heyerdahl plays one of the most complicated and interesting characters this side of Doctor Doom. And I don't mean any of the on-screen portrayals of Doctor Doom, because those have all largely been shite. But his character begins very much as a villain. Towards the end, it's a bit questionable how much of the villain is still remaining. And I think in some ways that's a little bit of what kind of killed this series. The first 2 seasons had a different theme than the last 2 seasons. I prefer the season 3 and 4 theme. It was slated to get a 5th season, but it never came to pass for whatever reason. There was a change up in the cast in the 3rd season, if I recall correctly. And while it did kind of throw things off kilter a little bit, taken by themselves, in isolation, those 2 seasons are still worth watching. Though, if you've watched the first 2 seasons, and I couldn't recommend to you to watch the series in anything other than its original order. The 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 for seasons. There isn't a massive break between them or anything. Continuity is not destroyed. It's just that they lose one character and gain another, and another aspect of what may have caused the fall of this show is that the new character that was brought in was kind of proto-woke. And it is what it is. The show was created by Damien Kindler. He was a driving force on Stargate SG-1 and I believe Stargate Atlantis. I have to apologize if he was actually involved with Stargate Universe, because I never actually watched that show. That's down the list of things I want to see. Because I am a fan of Robert Carlyle. If you haven't seen Plunkett and McLean, yeah. If you're a fan of the Dresden Files, Highlander, Bram Stoker's Dracula, MacGyver in some ways, yeah, if you're a fan of any of those properties, you would see elements you enjoy in Sanctuary. Now, will I say it's a great series? No. No, I will not. Do I say it's a series that I think you should watch if you're a geek? Abso-fucking-lutely. It's got a beautiful woman in the lead. Bit of a questionable accent at times, because it doesn't suit Amanda Tapping all the time. And there are times where, especially in the first few episodes, it comes off jarring. Now, once you get past that initial shock, because if you're used to watching her as Sam Carter, you're used to watching her with an American accent. She's actually from Canada. She's from BC, where this show was filmed. One of my favorite things about this show is that it introduces or reintroduces to newer audiences concepts from older sci-fi and kind of modern, I hesitate to call it conspiracy theory, because it's not quite that. it's more... yeah, it's probably best to say that it's the elements from Victorian sci-fi that it reintroduces to new audiences. I would happily show this show to an older teen audience, and I'm sure people of all ages above that would enjoy it. It can be a little adult for people under that age. So, I mean, a little parental supervision never goes awry. Seagulls are chirping. It's early morning here on Sunday. I'm getting ready to do my stream. But as far as whether or not I think this is a good show, I absolutely do. I cannot recommend this show enough. Whether I think you'll enjoy it or not, that's a different story. My taste in media tends to run to the slightly kooky a lot of the time. I'm still a massive fan of The Princess Bride, for example. But if you ask me to choose a movie like The Princess Bride, I'm going to pick Lady Hawk every time. And Lady Hawk is not everyone's cup of tea. With this show, there are some wonderful... it's also got some historical fiction elements. There is a very strong integration of history as well, from the Victorian era, World War II. I don't think it comes much beyond World War II in terms of the historical episodes or the historical elements. It is set mostly in the modern day. There are some flashback episodes. There are quite a significant number of flashbacks in the show. There is an absolutely amazing moment with Jim Burns singing a beautiful, beautiful song, which turned me into an instant Jim Burns fan. Well, no, that's not true. Highlander turned me into a Jim Burns fan. But if you haven't seen Highlander and you come to this scene with Jim Burns singing, oh, you are going to be blown away. In any case, folks, I can't say any more without spoiling things, which really hurts because I really want to share my love for this show with you guys. So I'm hoping you'll go and have a look at Tubi. The link to Tubi in the description. And I really hope you watch this show. Again, like a lot of shows, it takes a little while to find its feet. And like too many shows sometimes, it kind of slips towards the end. But that middle is like biting into a chocolate cake and discovering that hot lava sauce in the middle. It is so worth it. Okay, I hope you're having a good day. I hope you continue to have good days. And rise again until lambs become lions. Bye-bye.